What's going on, guys? Austin here, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the extra points post Week 8, that means Week 9, NFL Power Rankings. So we're going to start where we always do, at the bottom of the barrel. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosted the Baltimore Ravens for Thursday Night Football, and so what do they get for that? Absolutely nowhere, because they lost the game, and they lost it by 5. They were favored by 1.5. I believe, when the line started. But I might have been able to move them above the Panthers if the Panthers didn't have a fantastic showing against the Atlanta Falcons. And I mean, they almost won that game. They could have easily won that game. If what's his name? If DJ Moore doesn't have, some silly penalty that, brings the football back on the extra point and they don't shank the extra point, they would have won that game. The Steelers, they got blown out by the Eagles. A lot of people have gotten blown out by the Eagles. I can't move them up. Can't really move them down. They're not worse than these teams. The Broncos had a good win against the Jags in London. They didn't look like the better team at all. They looked like they had 2 lucky plays that got them into scoring position. The Jags, you can't have your running back go for 170 yards and a touchdown and end up passing for like 110 yards. So for that, because of the disjointed offense, granted, it's against the Broncos, one of the best defenses in the NFL. I don't care. You can't fail to, complete drives like that. And especially Trevor Lawrence, you've got all the pieces that you need to succeed. Short of Jerry Rice and Calvin Johnson, what more could you ask for? Up next, Texans, just losing the way that they did to the Titans. It wasn't a crazy loss, but it's just enough to barely knock them down. The Colts benching Matt Ryan because for some reason Carson Wentz wasn't good enough, and so they wanted to roll with Matt Ryan on the bench and Sam Ehlinger at quarterback. I think they're getting what they deserve. The trade deadline is in about 13 hours, 14 hours. And I'd like to see every good player on their team somewhere else. I'd like to see a player like Stephon Gilmore traded to a contender again, and Jonathan Taylor. I'd like to see him move. See if Buffalo's willing to part with the first round pick for him. Send Quentin Nelson somewhere. I don't really care where. Just send them all. Darius Leonard gone. Get them all out of there. The Colts, they're just one of the most poorly owned franchises of the last 5 years or so. And then the Browns, who just had a very impressive win against the Bengals. Now, in the last 4 or 5 years, they've absolutely owned the Bengals, so I'm not going to put too much stock into the blowout 32-13 victory, but you get props for winning. Next, we've got just the below average teams. I couldn't really move down Detroit and Washington because they basically did what you'd expect, against who they played. Detroit put up a bunch of points in the first half. They were up 27-17, but then in typical Detroit fashion, they just blew that lead and ended up losing. I think it was 31-27. Washington, again, just barely winning, kind of getting lucky against the Colts. Now the Packers, that's an interesting team. They showed me a lot. They had a ton of rushing yards against the number 1 rush defense in the league, and they held the Buffalo Bills to like 200 passing yards. So the number 1 pass defense that the Packers have showed out against the Bills. Josh Allen had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It looked exactly the way that you'd expect a get-right game for the Packers as far as their defense to be. The Bears, just kind of generally getting embarrassed, but on the bright side, 2 consecutive weeks, their offense has looked very good against great defenses in New England and Dallas. That'll be something interesting to watch. Raiders get absolutely smacked against the Saints. They get shut out 24-0. I expected this game to go over because I thought that the Raiders could score points. Now, I've been a believer in the Saints defense, but holy hell was that a terrible performance. Titans starting a rookie quarterback kind of beat up on the Texans, but Derrick Henry had 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's about what you'd expect. I can't move them that high. I don't know if I trust the Titans over the Cardinals. Maybe not. Who knows? Cardinals, though, I moved them down just because I kind of regretted having them so high already. I mean, 14 is a little too high for a team that just doesn't have any quality wins on their roster or on their season rather. I really love DeAndre Hopkins. To me, I mean, I've just been a fan of his since like 2014. Maybe I've just been overrating him for so long. But now, I mean, it's clear that he is, one of the 5 best receivers in the NFL. He's in that conversation for number 1. But unfortunately, the team is just so disjointed that, if the Cardinals were smart, they'd probably end up being sellers at this trade deadline too. And the New England Patriots, I mean, doing what they do best, beating up on the Jets, taking advantage of young, awful quarterback play. Patriots, I'd say, got lucky to have this win. But that being said, I believe the Jets would beat more teams than the Patriots would. So I've got the Jets, a couple spots higher. I just think that there's a specific positional matchup and a schematic edge that Bill Belichick has over young quarterbacks. The Falcons got a nice crunch time win against the Panthers. Now I'm kind of upset that they gave up that touchdown because I bet the Falcons -4.5. They went for that extra field goal for no reason to go up by 6, which made me happy. And then they gave up like a 70-yard touchdown bomb to DJ Moore to send the game into overtime, and they only kicked a field goal to win the game, which helped my fantasy team because Young Wei Koo is my kicker. So, I get a bunch of points at the end there, but boy, that didn't help my money. Giants have to move down. I mean, you go on the road to Seattle and lose to another up-and-coming team. It's understandable. But, for that reason, Seattle's at home. They kind of caught the Giants off guard. The Giants had strung so many wins together. I couldn't expect it to happen, again and again and again. So Seattle moves up, the Giants move down. The Jets, we already talked about. I think they do so many things well. The Breece Hall injury might come back to get them. I mean, they threw the ball so much more than they have been all season. And it really didn't look good, but it is the Patriots. On the other side, I mean, the Saints, their defense is starting to come together. They didn't even have Marshawn Lattimore. Maybe once he comes back, if they can get a healthy Michael Thomas, which all of a sudden seems like, impossible. It seems like getting a healthy Anthony Davis. But maybe if they get a healthy Michael Thomas, they can end up being one of the top 10 teams like I thought they would be all season. The Chargers, they're just too banged up. I didn't want to move them down on their bye, but I had to because I had to put the Dolphins above them in that top 10 category. The Dolphins, who have the, so far, best wide receiver tandem in the NFL, along with one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the entire National Football League. But here we go, moving into the cream of the crop. The San Francisco 49ers move back in while the Giants move out. Now, the 49ers had a great showing against the Rams. To be fair, they always have a great showing against the Rams. But, when you trade for Christian McCaffrey and you make it work, you get to be bumped up to the number 6 team. Right now, today, if they played Dallas, I don't know if they'd beat them just because of how dominant Dallas has been defensively, as well as having a nice balanced offense. But I think San Fran is going to take time before they move forward and start getting these wins. So in the future, San Fran, to me, might be able to move up into that, 2 to 4, or maybe even 1 to 3 spot. Baltimore, they did exactly what I expected them to do, go on the road on a short week and barely beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If they can get healthy at any point, which having a Thursday night game and not walking away with any injuries, that really helps. The Bengals, I mean, what are you going to do with a team that, started to look like they had things put together, and then Jamar Chase goes out and the offense just absolutely dies. Evan McPherson is missing kicks. Joe Burrow can't get the ball down the field. I mean, I'm not as much of a fan of Joe Burrow as a lot of y'all are, but Jamar Chase not being there and him just absolutely bombing doesn't help your case. And then the cream of the crop, the top 4 on the other side, they've been in that position for like 3 consecutive weeks. The Bills, they went at home and beat the Packers. Now, I don't think that what I talked about with the Packers, it doesn't show as much of a chink in the armor of the Bills as it shows more of a shine in the eye of hope that the Packers have. The Eagles, they beat up on a bad team. The Chiefs had a bye. And the Vikings, they had a decent shootout win against a middling Arizona team. So that's about what I'd expect from them. All right, guys. Thanks for watching that video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Stay up to date on all of our future content.